Hello gamers, we're so back for the third video and probably the final video of today because we have a buff breakdown, and not just any buff breakdown. You thought we were done with talking about Lizzes? No, we're just getting started. We have buffs for 3 Lizzes, well arguably 4, but yeah. Buffs to OG Lancer, permanent 4-star, skill buff, MP buff for Caster Liz, the OG Halloween Welfare, and then a skill buff for Mecha Liz from Halloween 3, again for both variants, but for the sake of the simplification, we're just going to basically talk about one of them because they're the same gameplay-wise, okay? So yeah, let's just go down in order. I think I read these really fast when they were shown on stream, but I haven't really made any conclusions yet, so let's see what we have here, okay? So buff to Lancer's 3rd skill, previously on a 7-turn cooldown, she still had one of these base gutses, and there's not a ton of them left in the game anymore. There are still some left after this too, but most of them have been buffed by now. So previously, on a 7-turn cooldown, she got a Guts for 1 time 4 turns with a 2k revive. Not very good. The uptime is just passable, because it's just over half way of the cooldown, but certainly not very good. Just a very standard defensive thing that's not very strong, so let's see what's now different. First of all, now on a 6-turn cooldown, so the cooldown came down, that's cool. The Guts remains the same, but I think that's better now, still, because obviously the uptime just improved. It's still 4 turns, but the cooldown coming down, so made it just better by default, so that's not bad. But now we have 2 new lines. She gets a 30% battery when on use, and also 30% buster up for 3 turns for herself. Won't you look at that? After all these years, for all you crazy Liz fans out there, you can finally bust your loop now if you want to. It probably won't be very pretty, but you can do it. And honestly, this buff is interesting because, again, if you watch my coverage of the new 5-star Liz, she actually would work decently well with Lancer Liz in farming as well for that AoE single target mix on multi-core. And with this helps too, because more batteries is always welcome for comps, you know, to make it easier to build stuff, and then, you know, more damage for Lancer doesn't hurt either, because her damage never was really super high. So now with this, she has a buster up, she has an AoE defense down, she has attack up, sadly only 20% for herself, but hey, again, if you pair her with the new Liz, that's a juicy 40% attack for her. So yeah, honestly, her damage might be a little bit better now on herself too. The MP is still kind of whatever for farming, unfortunately. Neither the buff chance down or the curse really do too much, at least in the case I was talking about, but, you know, at least she does a bit more damage now. And again, the battery definitely helps in farming, because she had none before this. So with this and the append, that's already 50%. And then she can get some help from Big Liz too. It's not a groundbreaking buff, but with the addition of this and the new 5-star Liz, it's an interesting one for sure. Also, does this mean she's fully buffed now? I guess it does, yeah. She is now joining the ranks of the quad buffed servants. Like, all the skills in the MP have been now buffed. So on the tier list, we had her on B flat, which, I don't know, maybe slightly generous to begin with. But with this, I think she's at least a B+, hopefully. Unless I'm jumping the gun. She could still be maybe B, but maybe I'm overhyping the new Liz, but this could actually be okay with her too. So I'm just gonna put her into B+ now. Could still be B, potentially, I don't know yet. But I kind of want to move her up a little bit at least. Then we have a buff for Caster, and this is the only MP buff of these 3, so that's pretty exciting. So previously her MP, just a very basic one. 5-hit Buster AoE does damage. It did have Ignore Defense, which is cool. And obviously free MP5 for Welfare. And then for Overcharge, it did a Curse on all enemies for 3 turns. 500 damage base, 2500 on max OC. Very weak. Even when it had the Ignore Defense, just very weak. Because her own damage, and her being a caster as well, it never really did good damage. So the buff, honestly, is a good one that, you know, that they decided to buff her MP here. So let's see what's different now. So does damage, but now more. Still ignores defense. The curse is also the same, also an overcharge. So anything that was pre-existing didn't really change. But then we have some new stuff. So first of all, it does the Happy Halloween debuff on all enemies for 3 turns, which is basically the same as a 10% crit chance down on them, okay? You'll see why it's a different thing, because if you remember a previous buff, it makes sense. So yeah, 10% crit chance down on all enemies for 3 turns. Then she also applies a Halloween map to herself for 3 turns. So again, this changes the map as long as she's on the field with this. And then a new line, new overcharge effect. The full party gets 20% crit damage for 3 turns, scaling up to 60% on max OC. So pretty cute little addition. Not a ton, but sure, it's a new party-wide buff, I guess, so it doesn't hurt. So obviously it does more damage now, but then let's talk about this Happy Halloween thing first. So if you remember her first buff, or her first skill buff, it does a similar thing. So when you use the first skill, it tries to remove a buff from all enemies, one latest buff, and for every buff that it removes, or for every enemy that it was successfully removed the buff from, they get this Happy Halloween crit chance down 10% for 3 turns, right? 500% chance to apply. And again, if you hit, like, let's say you remove a buff from 3 enemies, they all get this, there you go. But then, also on this skill, she gets 20% battery per this special crit chance down. That's the reason they made it special, so no normal crit chance down procs this. So if you're removed from 3 enemies, they got that debuff, she would get 60% battery from this skill alone. But now, as the MP has it too, without condition, that's pretty interesting. Because again, for the first skill to work, you need to remove a buff from the target. This one just always just flat out puts this debuff on the enemies. There's no condition for it. So let's say, again, assume you're fighting 3 enemies. You MP with her, that's 3 of these. That alone, even if you don't remove any buffs from them, you would already get 60% battery for herself from using this skill. But if you happen to remove any buffs, you can easily get like 100+% battery. It could be a full battery, basically. So that's basically what this is. So now it's easier to use her battery, because you don't need buffs on the enemies necessarily. A 60% battery against 3 enemies is already huge. Now granted, again, you still have to get to your MP first, and the only way to get there is basically this 30% battery. Otherwise, and again, assuming you can't buff remove immediately. But if you do get to your MP, then afterwards, this skill suddenly becomes way nicer. Granted, you would like to use this skill on turn 1 anyway because of the big stars per turn, but at the very least, you know, the healing becomes more valuable because you're probably going to get damaged easier after turn 1. So it's a bit awkward still with, you know, the ordering stuffs, but it does make the MP more spammable, and it's obviously better because, you know, the MP also does more damage now. And the crit chance down can also be helpful on bosses. Now, as for the other new stuff, the crit damage up can be cool because, again, she does generate a good amount of stars per turn. She even has a small star bomb here, so it can be a cute little boost. But then the other new thing is this thing, Halloween map. Now, as far as I know, there's not a single servant in the game that benefits from a Halloween map. In fact, I'm pretty sure the map trait did not even exist before. I assume it can pre-exist, I could be wrong, but at the very least you can get it from this. Now, I assume the reason this is here is because the new welfare, who I haven't even seen yet, the Avenger Liz of the End, probably has something that synergizes with a Halloween map. Or maybe they're future-proofing even more, I don't know. But because no one, as far as I remember, has anything to do with Halloween map, including Caster Liz herself, who now has this, it must be for the new welfare. So hold on to that for now. I don't know how valuable that's going to be yet, so I can't really gauge that. But besides that, the other stuff, at least, is a welcome addition. So yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I kind of agree with Sete on chat. I don't think she will still be a farmer, necessarily. I think she will still be relegated to kind of a boss position, even if, despite having potentially quite a lot of battery in her kit, just because, again, it's debuff reliant, so it doesn't really work with farming, unfortunately. Honestly, now, as a budget option, she might be viable for an AoE caster for bosses. I'm not even joking. Don't expect crazy damage even after this, I want to say. But she does offer many interesting things now. So she could be an interesting pick now, for sure. Now on the caster tier list, we had her in flat C. And with this, I think she should be minimum C+. But maybe that's it for now. We'll see. Could even be a B, honestly. I don't know. But yeah, she's still kind of a hard nut to crack here. We'll see. And especially how impactful that Halloween map will be. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but who knows? So let's just go with that for now. And then we have the Mecha Liz skill buff to talk about as the final one. So let's see what they did with her. So this is her second buff ever, the other one also being a skill buff. So previously her third skill on a 5-turn cooldown. Before anything, it just removes all her defensive buffs that can be removed 500% chance. So even with like 100% buff removal resistance, that's not enough. They're just gonna get removed, which can be really annoying. Especially like she even herself has one effect. Like on the first skill, she gets this 30% defense up. So you wanna order your skills maybe a bit better if you're gonna MP turn 1 with that. So you don't end up removing that big defensive buff. So, but yeah, also some buffs you might get from allies might get removed. So a bit awkward of a demerit, but you know, it is there. So besides that, she got 60% MP damage and crit damage for 1 turn. Quite an it's like a mana burst, but a weird one with a heavy cost. So it was never really that strong, sadly. But with that, her MP at least did some decent damage because the free MP5 as well on top. So let's see what they changed now with the buff. Same 5-turn cooldown, and unfortunately, they still kept the demerit. This is a rare moment where it's a modern buff where they keep a demerit. As usually, like almost in every other case, when a modern buff happens to a skill, or maybe even an MP, they tend to remove demerits, or at least make them very small. But this one is still here. You're still gonna remove your defensive buff, so be wary for that. But now, she gets these nice buffs for 3 turns. So the cost might be worth it now, actually. And again, you can kind of play around it with ordering anyway, so sometimes it's not even that big of a deal. But yeah, now 60% at MP damage and crit damage for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. That's pretty good. And you can even stack that with Koyan. And imagine putting like Oberon 3rd skill on top of that. Yeah, that could be that could be pretty interesting MP damage after that, I'm not gonna lie. Imagine doubling that. So I don't know. This is interesting, actually. This is very interesting. She will still do generic damage. She doesn't really have power mods or anti-traits, but that's a lot of MP damage that you could stack. But also there's another new line. Before damage, she does a 500 burn on the target for 3 turns. And that effect lasts for 3 turns. Not that big of a deal. The burn itself will obviously do like no damage at all, but it could enable some stuff like Honey Lake or the new C they added on this C event for anti-curse and anti-burn, or some other stuff. But yeah, the most important thing is the increasing these to 3 turns. This could actually have something, just because of how high the MP damage goes. Her crits will still be very inconsistent, because her absorb on base is not impressive, and her stars per turn and bomb are not massive, so she mostly has like an occasional decent crit turn. But yeah, that MP damage is very interesting. Like, this could be a decent budget option for some farm nodes that obviously have those big HP mobs. Sadly, the problem is she doesn't do anything for her allies besides like stars. So multi-core is still like, it doesn't sound too impressive. But that's still a lot of damage. So sadly, the cash is gone from this extra half of the extra classes. But I don't remember where he placed her. Probably not super high. But I'd start with B, probably. Maybe just there for now. I assume that's higher than we actually placed her this year. If not, very awkward. Or I'd be very surprised if she was higher than this. Again, this is considering like a welfare option as well. So there you go. I don't even know how long this video is. It took me even a while to actually go through the caster stuff as well, which probably mostly cut from this video anyway. But there you go. That's a lot of Liz buffs in one package. So if you enjoyed this buff breakdown, do me a solid and press the thumbs up button on this video. It really helps out. And do subscribe not to miss out on this, not to miss out on future videos. I am still going to cover the welfare. Not today, because you can't even apparently obtain her today, let alone FA. But hopefully sooner than later, I'll do a coverage of Liz of the End, the Avenger welfare of the event. So maybe something to do with pumpkin maps, Halloween maps, whatever you want to call it. Who knows? Also, shout out to my patrons on the screen right now, and Suit for being a big YouTube tier member supporter. And otherwise, again, once more, happy Halloween. Check out the merch, available up until the end of October. Then it's gone. At least the Gao lineup is. Maybe future lineups coming at some point. And see you in the next video. Bye-bye.